Last week, we talked about multiple mysterious disappearances in various U.S. national parks and the strange circumstances surrounding them. Today, we dive into the theories surrounding those stories and try to decipher what could be the cause of the missing 411. This is Red Web. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Mystery Monday. We are now in the throes of December. Alfredo Diaz is my co-host. I'm Trevor Collins. And Fredo, before we dive into, listen, I know this is a part two. I'm going to get you all up to speed, Task Force. There's a lot of details I want to remind you of from last week. But first, I'm super excited about a couple things. One, that jacket that came out on Black Friday.
Dude, that, I mean, look, we are the hosts of Red Web, but let me tell you, that jacket is
hypothetically
dope.
We are.
We don't know. There might
really
be a
know.
mystery behind that one.
Listen, maybe this is all in your head, and this is just a dream that you've been hosting this podcast this whole time.
That's true. Also, maybe you haven't seen our faces. Oh my God.
Accidentally did a face reveal, accidentally,
on
Halloween.
We accidentally did a whole episode face reveal.
Dude, I didn't even think about that until someone commented, face reveal.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, we do a bunch of different things and mostly on camera, but yeah, I mean, this little slice is our own little island here. And
right.
And yeah, some people are new because you never know who knows you from what. And,
right.
Yeah.
Well, on top of that, we have a bunch of other really, really cool stuff that we've been waiting to release until it all got into our facility until Black Friday. It's all out now, so please go get it at store.roosterteeth.com. But on top of that, there's a bunch of other sales and everything. We also have, as of December 2nd, some Mothman propaganda. If you want a poster or a loose fit shirt, we got Mothman, the misunderstood hero.
It looks cool.
It's so good.
It very much has like Batman animated series vibes to it.
Oh yeah.
It's a really clean poster. And that's what I like with like any type of art that I have in my house. I want to look very clean.
Right.
Minimalistic-ish.
Right.
And this is kind of right up that alley. And we have like 2 color variants too as well.
Yeah, there's a red and a blue, and then I think only the red is on the shirt. It's basically the same design, but I don't know.
But you got 2 different variants for the colors of the poster, fit the ambiance up in your house next to your little cork board. Well, there's a mystery there because that's the only one I know.
Croissant.
My little croissant. But yeah, I mean, just it's so cool. We say it all the time, but like, the show is evolving.
Yeah. Next, we just got to work on baby hands.
Yeah,
it's genuinely in the works.
It actually is.
We gave it to our e-commerce team, our merch team, and they're like, "All right, we'll see what we can do. We'll make it happen."
Yeah, some of the mock-ups, I'm like, baby hands looking too kicked up.
He's looking real sexy right now.
Too sexy.
He's innocent,
baby
like Casper.
Ain't like that.
Yeah, he's the friendly ghost, not the
Yeah, so we're in the throes of bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there's ever anything, Task Force, that you that tickles your fancy out of what we do here, and you want to see it merchandised, yeah, we also have a notebook. Jillian's across the table. Jillian is joining us for an episode. She's bashful. She doesn't want to say hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh,
that was the most bashful hello I've ever experienced.
Yeah, Jillian is one of our researchers. In fact, our main researcher, and she does most of our outlines for the show. Well, let's dive back into Missing 411. Let me get you up to speed because I want to make sure that we bridge the gap properly on 2-parters. So that way, even if you join us only on the second part, you're always up to speed. So Missing 411 is a special subset of missing persons cases as outlined by former detective David Politis. While looking at a lot of different missing persons cases, he noticed that a handful, in fact, a large handful, so several, not baby handsfuls, we're talking regular human-sized handfuls of cases that have specific profile points, as he calls them. And I'm going to go through a couple of those just so you have a general idea of what kind of cases we're talking about. But again, as always, if you want to listen to some of the specific stories that we outlined, head over back to part 1. But a lot of these cases that David Politis outlines in his books and documentaries are cases that happen in national parks here in the U.S. They tend to happen somewhere near some sort of source of water or large granite field or boulder field. They tend to be in the late afternoon. They tend to be when an individual separates from a group. Very tropey in that way, right? No, don't split up in a horror film. Then there's also other circumstances around it, such as canines not being able to find the person or track a scent as they normally would. Or when the search party just kicks off, inclement weather rolls in, whether it's a thick fog, heavy rain, or snow that blankets the area. There's something that impedes the search effort. And that's the general idea behind, I mean, there's a couple other details, but that's the general idea behind a lot of the stories that he outlines is it has these pieces of circumstance around them.
I mean, what I've learned is just don't go to a national park.
How dare you say that?
I mean, even
support the nature.
I'll support it from a distance.
I'm going to support it through Google Images. I'm gonna
just Google Images.
You ever be like, you heard a doom scroll? Well, now this is happy scrolling.
Yeah,
You're like, look at nature.
Scroll.
You know, sometimes you want to get sunlight, you just look up a picture of sun.
If they got an Instagram, I'll follow it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Like, it just one. There's all that, right? The 411 missing cases.
Yeah.
And then two, there's just normal outright, I got lost in the woods.
Hundo.
Right? Nothing mysterious about that. I got lost. National parks are big, lots of trees.
Oh my God, they are.
Like,
I mean,
you can hike for miles and miles.
Yeah.
And never be seen.
Like, even when we talked about the Mothman case, right? We looked at the forest that he supposedly resides in over in Jersey, and that thing is sprawling. And then you think of films like The Ritual or Blair Witch, and again,
good films.
There are just tons of national parks out there, whether they're forested or otherwise, that are sprawling. And we like to think that we know every nook and cranny of this surface of this planet. But I mean, like, in fact, one of the cases that we talked about with Dennis Martin, the young boy that went missing, despite having very recently to that moment been playing with a bunch of other kids. You know, one of the critiques of that particular story is that there are abandoned mine shafts under that area. And so, again, it's hard to know what's under your very feet.
True. I mean, you're not wrong.
You got a dune sand monster coming at you, a sandworm going to come gulp you up.
Oh, you're talking Doom. That instantly threw me back to Tremors.
Tremors, Kevin Bacon's.
Oh yeah, Kevin Bacon's. I used to play that as a kid. I'd be like, I gotta jump from rock to rock.
This man is smiling. He heard Kevin Bacon. He went, yeah,
Kevin Bacon.
Like a kid in a candy store talking about Tremors, dude. I loved that movie as a kid. I don't know what it was.
It was a fun
about it. Yeah,
movie.
It was just.
I don't know.
It
wasn't too scary.
Exactly.
I think
that's what it was.
in the desert.
And also, like, listen, I'm never finding myself in the desert. So maybe that's why I indulged in it. Because I'm like, I'll never find myself just out in the sand. This is fun. This isn't scary at all.
Jump around from rock to rock. Like, don't touch the ground.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the whole premise behind this particular portion of the show is that we're going to explore the theories that Jillian outlined behind, what could be behind this phenomenon. Because, the cynic in me, the pragmatic in me says, of course, you can cherry pick any sort of number of cases, especially when Paulides here grabs a bunch of cases that have some sort of whatever it is that it prevents people from finding someone. Then it's like, okay, well, of course, there's going to be plenty of those. You might have just...
Right. If we're talking about, hundreds of people going missing every year, or even half that, piece of that, slice of that, you're going to have some similarities.
Right.
I mean, a park is still a park, right?
Right.
There's only so many things that can happen in a park.
Exactly. But the thing is, and what kind of got my gears turning as we went through many of the stories, are once you kind of get hands-on with each case and you start looking at the details, it does sound very strange how people can go like in an instant, it seems, just disappear into supposedly thin air, despite having parents looking over their shoulder periodically, despite being only a few yards ahead of your friends while you crest a hill.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
One can look at this at large on the topical, just as a genre and say, yeah, you're cherry picking, whatever, to sell some books. But man, when you really start to look at the cases, it is pretty strange.
I mean, cresting over a hill and then disappearing, it's awkward. It's weird. I don't know. I mean, I talked about this in the previous episode. Like, how does that happen without notice?
Right.
Like, if you threw me into a national park and you're like, get from point A to point B as quiet as possible, you'd probably hear it. Right? I'm stepping on branches,
definitely
dead leaves, all that kind of stuff. I'm rustling around. Like, I wouldn't be able to be super quiet.
Right. I mean, even Tom Messick from one of our stories that we talked about was an avid hunter, camper.
Yeah.
Had a walkie-talkie, had a gun. disappeared without a trace, despite, we talked about it in detail. So like, again, I don't want to dive into those weeds, but like, it's just odd. And so it really, really piques my interest. But without further ado, I want to talk about some of the theories. I mean, because there are a plethora of potentials that could answer as to what's going on here. But let's start with theory number 1, cryptids. At large, just the topic of cryptids.
Obviously, Bigfoot.
Yeah, number 1 suspect on the list.
Yeah, where are the footprints?
Ooh.
Bigfoot is, everyone's telling me out here, Bigfoot big.
Yeah, let's see some of those plaster molds.
Where are the footprints? Unless you're telling me Bigfoot's like 3 foot tall.
Wait, are we talking about
Jersey Devil?
Talking about baby feet?
Oh, baby feet.
Just a big, bulky, hairy Bigfoot with the tiniest little peg legs.
This whole baby narrative of like anything. I mean, look, even if he had baby feet, you'd still see something.
Right.
Like,
especially,
you see rabbit tracks or anything like that. I don't know, right? Like, and the thing is, some of these disappearances are happening so quick between the disappearance and the search, right? The crossing over the hill.
They're like, let's search right away.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't see a cryptid happening. Also, it doesn't have to be Bigfoot, but what if it's like people that live in the woods, etc. Like,
ooh, hills have eyes kind of thing.
Yeah. So you're telling me like they snatched them and then were covering their tracks as they were going. Like,
right. Well, the thing is, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I do want to remind you that like some of these cases, the inclement weather rolls in pretty quickly. Like, boom, Tommy's gone. Boom, where's Tommy? Boom, oh my God, I can't see anything because it's like it's downpouring, or the snow's in my eyes, or the thick fog rolls through. I mean, it's like built into these cases because these are the cases that he in particular outlined. But yeah, like Paulides himself didn't, definitively say what he believed was behind these things. I mean, obviously he talks about the cases, he positions them, and then maybe noodles on it a little bit, but he kind of strongly suggests in his books and documentaries that it could be some kind of cryptid, right? Doesn't maybe necessarily have to be Bigfoot. It could be any number of cryptids that are out there. I mean, at some point we're going to have to cover, like, each state kind of has a state cryptid almost. Each state has a story. Jillian's nodding.
I've seen the little map with all.
There's a map for it, right?
Okay, so there's a map.
Yeah.
I guess some might have multiples, I guess.
Probably, right. I mean, they're nomadic, these cryptids, they got
popping up everywhere.
They're traveling. But ultimately, like, it seems pretty clear to me that something paranormal is happening for people to go yoink in that split second of a moment.
Yeah, the weather stuff rolling in, that's just
government.
I don't know. I mean, like, that'd be crazy. I mean, like, if the government did it, and like, hello crops, they need, precise. They could use precise weather. Yeah, like, I don't really, the whole weather situation, the non-believer in me is sitting here thinking like, I mean, did they check the weather? I mean, if you were in that moment in time, right, even 5 minutes before, like, could you check the weather app and see that like rain was coming in, fog was coming in, etc. Right. Because even at that point, just like,
here's the thing. If I looked up every missing persons case that happened under a full moon, am I cherry picking to find some sort of not rare, but not common circumstance that happens to be correlated, but not causing, right? So that's some of the criticism that he has genuinely come under, which is he cherry picking in a way that like you've picked the most intriguing things,
right?
But out of, if you will, luck or just happenstance,
like what is the ratio?
Or is it because there's something going on there? That's the real big question. But I mean, going back to kind of our Bigfoot episode, our first foray into the cryptid space, we talked about Albert Osman, his story was that he was kidnapped and that he was taken far away. And he had this whole story about how he was, treated by Bigfoot, how he returned, that he wasn't hurt. And honestly, that could kind of address how some of these stories that we talked about, where a body was found, but they didn't know what the cause of death was. That's a commonality in these stories, but that they are elsewhere, right? Somebody's skipping rocks on the water. Parents turn around, he's gone. Body was found amongst the shrubbery, 1,500 feet up higher in altitude, several miles away. I mean, weeks later, but they don't know what happened. And so there is a potential there. if Albert Ostman is to be believed, right, with his kidnapping story, that, you know, maybe Bigfoot sometimes get lonely. They want to yoink people off the beaten paths and say, let me show you the world of the Bigfoot. Maybe, you know what, maybe that's what it is. Maybe you shouldn't go to national parks because you're looking for evidence and they say, I'll give you evidence. Come with me.
They don't come back, though. Like
maybe their society's better than ours. You think of the Gungans?
There's a whole society like with a bunch of Bigfoots and people that are just like, I'm going to stay here. This society rocks.
I could walk all over Naboo. I wouldn't have known about the Gungans bubble city, you know?
That's true.
Yeah, there's knowing nods all around the room.
And now Misa lost.
Oh my God. Okay. But I mean, you got hollow planet theory. Maybe Bigfoot's hollowed out this planet with a shovel, and he's like, I'm in there.
Don't forget the portals. Don't forget about portals.
There's always portals.
There's always some kind of portal.
I mean, how do we know that Bigfoot isn't some sort of advanced species? Maybe we think that that's hair. Maybe that's his armor. We use metal. They use hair.
I don't believe there's a Stargate situation happening here.
Well, we'll just have to find out. On the next face reveal of Red Web.
Yeah. If it was to be a cryptid, I feel like it'd have to be something paranormal, right?
Yeah.
It'd sweep you up or dissolve you away or something because there's like no traces being found.
Exactly. I mean, that's a good point. And so that kind of opens the door to a couple other cryptids that do kind of lean more paranormal, such as the Wendigo, which we haven't talked about.
Some sort of influence on the weather.
Right.
Yeah.
Which has that's a lot of Native American folklore around that. We haven't talked in detail about the Wendigo, but man, is that fascinating folklore. And then, of course, skinwalkers, which we did talk briefly about. No, I guess not briefly about.
We did a whole
episode in it, but yeah, very interesting stuff. But let's talk about the Wendigo and the skinwalker in particular and kind of some of their attributes. So the Wendigo, also pronounced Wendigo, are a being that kind of originates in folklore, specifically around the peoples that are in the Algonquian language family. There are a lot of different Native American tribes in that kind of family, and it tends to center on those folk. It's an evil being that has an insatiable hunger, and in many descriptions, it's actually quite humanoid. They are associated with coldness, and every time they eat a person, it is said that they grow proportionately. I see you reacting with shock and awe.
Yeah, you said evil, and I was like, oh man, damn, of course it's evil, right?
Of course, yeah.
Of course. People going missing, but eating people?
Yeah.
But then,
especially if they grow proportionately. I didn't know that part about them.
Yeah. But,
so if I ate you, I'd be like twice my size.
Right.
Exactly.
So then if hundreds of people go missing and we're saying this is it, how is it not like massive? Or
it could be multiple.
Started really tiny.
Oh. Oh no.
Then got to human
nibbling
size.
At your heels.
It was more apparent, right? And
it had kids.
Then, like, it's not stopping. No, stop. Not everything. It doesn't have to be multiple.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know. Like, there's also like
what an interesting creature.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think at some point maybe it's worth a whole episode because I'd love to dive into it deeper. But there's also, as a part of it, and this is, I can't pretend to know too much about the Wendigo. Like, I've played Until Dawn, so I know about that kind of narrative and how that plays into that.
Until Dawn.
Yeah, there's that angle of Wendigo, but then there's also stories and folklore, like I said. But my understanding is that people can also become cursed and become a Wendigo.
Oh.
And so basically that opens up the door of there being multiple. And then also if they don't end up eating people, then they'll die off, right? And
yeah. I mean, the whole eating aspect, I mean, some of these cases, again, right, the search happened immediately. So, I don't know, like, how do you eat someone and not leave a mess?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, skinwalkers, though, let's talk about that for a second, because they are another malicious being, and they stem from the Navajo culture. And supposedly, skinwalkers are creatures that can take the form of many different animals and even people. So here's the thing. If a skinwalker comes through and picks somebody up, scoops them off, however they disappear that person, even if there is a search that goes out looking for them, how are you going to know what to look for if this thing can disguise itself as almost any living creature?
True. I mean, it's impossible at that point, right? If it wants to hide, it'll hide. But then, I mean, skinwalkers to me always felt like it was more feral.
Yeah.
But this would show that there's a lot of intelligence, right? Because then how do you not just attacking people randomly, or if there's a search, you're not going for people, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to Skinwalker Ranch, and I think of that story where the guy and his kid went out, and there was a wolf that had bitten onto the face of the cow.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
And how it was just calmly kind of going for it, and then they blasted it with
like
some
2
guns and then shotguns.
Yeah, they hit it a couple times in the face,
and then
just
they
kept
went,
going.
all right, I didn't want that cow anyway, and off it goes. So it almost doesn't seem like it's hyper aggressive. It's almost like it eats when it needs to. Kind of thing, because otherwise it would have been like, oh, I'm PO'd, turns, takes the guy out, and then maybe feasts on the cow or the person. I don't know. But when it comes to, like, I know we talked about, like, this being, Missing 411 being especially popular on TikTok. You know, there are a lot of TikTok users out there that share their stories on what they perceive as skinwalkers, with their run-ins of skinwalkers. Voices emanating from the forest or from the wilderness with their own voice. Hearing their own voice coming back to them, calling out to them, basically drawing them in like a siren almost. Like, so if you heard your voice say, Fredo, come over here, or like, hey, I need help, or just something of that nature, that's a run the other direction kind of situation for me.
I mean, if you and I were walking and we heard my voice from a distance, you'd turn to me and I would be gone. And then you'd hear the sound of a car driving away. There would be no hesitation.
Just the tires spinning out after the door
shut. You're either on that train out or not. Like, there's just there's no I'm gonna investigate this.
Right.
Like, why is my voice echoing?
Well, there's ones where it's like people hear screaming in the woods. And like other people are like,
no.
don't respond to that.
That makes it better. I will
no.
investigate the screaming. I'm nodding my head. I'm shaking my head rather.
Because most people would like go be like, oh, do they need help?
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to getting help, but I am not qualified to help you
that's
anyway.
That's the thing. I want to help. I'm just not qualified. I left my Swiss Army knife at home.
I have no combat training whatsoever.
Right.
I most likely don't have any survival tools. Look,
who gets a dull flashlight and goes, ooh, what's that? Click. And then they're like, hello?
Yeah.
Wait, where are you going?
They're just yelling. I don't know. I'll go get a park ranger and then they go back out there.
Yeah, I'd make a couple phone calls, police, park rangers, FBI, CIA, MI5, MI6, James Bond himself. I get them all out there.
The UN, get them out there. SpaceX, the whole group.
SpaceX, Elon Musk is on the ground.
How you got signal?
We'll drive to a place where there is signal.
Right.
I mean, look, I'll be honest.
I don't know. Hey, hold on a second. With AT&T trademarked, you can get signal wherever.
That's true.
Good luck.
That's not a real ad.
Good luck.
And I hope Papa Warner doesn't sue us. That's a good point,
I
though.
would just drive to where I get signal and then
fast.
And then further away.
Yeah. And then, But before we move on to the next theory, another really interesting piece that I think does fit within this cryptid area, there's a Reddit user, I'm going to try to pronounce this properly, Buffonite, Bufonite, who shared their theory that involves the human vision, right? As you know, we have the spectrum of colors that we can see in visible light, and then beyond that, there's ultraviolet light that we can't see, but that's how you get night vision cameras. And so basically what he's saying is there are wavelengths of light outside of the visible light that humans can see, and that there is the possibility that creatures might live within this space, so as to say that we can't see them, right? I mean, bees can see ultraviolet light. Various animals out there can see different wavelengths of light. Birds, for example.
I mean, there's science behind that. And, right? Who are we to say that there... I guess the only reason why people aren't being like, oh, there are things that exist out there that we can't see because of the light spectrum and stuff like that is because of the fact that we're not seeing random interactions, right, on a consistent basis. So it's not like there's this type of creature, animal, or bug that like we can't see because it's just not interacting. Like we can't put it in a box and have it like interact with stuff, right?
Right.
This kind of lines up with that conspiracy that like the government is putting like chemicals in the water, so then that way they're like you can't see like a certain
like fluoride is calcifying your pineal gland so you can't, think properly or whatever. Close your third eye kind of stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
That, and there's some people that think that, like, there's chemicals in the water, so that way we don't see, like, certain spectrums, and the government can control that. And
so that addresses my color blindness. That's what it is. I got a target for my lawsuit now. I'm coming for you.
If only that was the answer.
Joe Biden, you're going down.
Look, there are scientific backings for that, and unfortunately, you're just colorblind.
It's impossible for that to be genetic. It's impossible.
There's just no way.
It's interesting you mention the government, because we will talk about the idea of a government cover-up, of course, as another theory. But before we get into the next theory, this kind of makes me think, as a subset to the idea of the visible light spectrum. And this is also just truthfully backed by science, but it sounds so mad, like just mad when you say it. But like, if there are creatures and entities in the fourth dimension, they could easily just be right next to you and you would never know. Because you got to think about it think about flat world, right? You think about a 2D existence, this table. If there was a circle creature that was perfectly two-dimensional, flat, no depth to it, and it slid around and you called out to it, it would hear you. But it would be like, what? Where is that? Where's that coming from? If you put your finger onto the table, it would literally only see the portion of you that is touching the table, that sliver of you.
And so I get what you're getting at here.
Yeah, so if you grab then that circle to pull it off of the plane that it lived from, off the surface of the table, you're pulling it into the third dimension that it doesn't know about, and to everyone around it, it would look like it literally just disappeared in a millisecond. It did that, not that it slid out of eyesight, that it just disappeared. And so
just shifted from a 2D dimension to a 3D dimension.
Blink, that it would just blink out of existence. So
this is wild.
Take that up
I'm
one
here
dimension.
For it.
Yeah, to take that up one dimension, and it's incredibly possible.
Are you saying the reverse is happening? They're shifting from a 3-dimensional to a 2-dimensional?
That a fourth dimensional being, or that they somehow stumble into the fourth, right?
Fourth dimension.
Pop, they just disappear. I'm not saying that is what's going on here, but I just wanted to say, while exploring this idea of things that are out of our perception.
That is a wild theory. That's
out
awesome.
Of our perception.
Yeah, because then you can kind of just say that they coexist in perfect harmony. You know what I mean?
You also really got to think about it. I mean, space in our universe is immense. Just space. Moment of silence for space. I thought you were going to say something really dramatic. I was ready for it. He looked up to the light. He stared into it and he said, space. So when you think about the vastness of space, that's already wild. Now, in all of that space, now just take one two-dimensional sliver of it going through the whole thing. 99.9999999% of that universe is so vastly far away from that infinite plane that's exactly the same. So once you go up to the fourth dimension, we're going to be such a small fraction of what that fourth dimensional realm would be like. So it's like, if there are beings stumbling around in the fourth dimension, the odds of us stumbling into our third dimension or interacting with us is incredibly low. So if they are doing it would have to be
blowing my mind right
really
now.
intentional.
I mean,
especially
so interesting.
Especially out of all, look at the surface of this table and extend it in infinity. And then say only this blip has life. Only this quarter-sized portion of it has life. How do you know where to interact? You know what I mean?
I mean, because I truly believe that, we're not the only intelligent beings out there, or let alone the only life forms out there. The universe is vast and large, and we're just a small little piece of it, and it's ever expanding. But I didn't even think about, different planes and dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And that could just coexist with each other.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's interesting. I don't know what the circumstances that would be there to arise for someone to just be living their life and stumble into a different dimension. But, just again, while talking about the limited breadth of our senses, that is very much one of them. We take for granted what our senses are everything, but there is so much more beyond it. It's about to get psychedelic in here, but it's true. I mean,
it's still limited.
We are bound. So I don't know. I always find that very interesting to think about, the other dimensions, just even from a mathematical perspective.
Never even heard that theory or never crossed my mind.
I've listened to too many TED Talks about how there are 10 dimensions and like what's going on with that and all that. Anyway, but the next theory is another one that we've talked about. It's another one that I love because it's the glitch in the matrix. So this theory is something that we've talked about in previous episodes. And in those episodes, we usually try to pull stories that are similar to the mystery at hand. In this case, we have a case of Keith Parkins, who in 1952, at only 2 years old, was found alive, but had traveled 8 miles. He was another one of those missing 411 cases. He had no memory of what happened. Obviously, being 2 years old, it would have been hard to get any of that out of him anyway, right? But he had no idea what had happened. He traveled 8 miles, and there was no evidence of an animal having interacted with him besides some potential like scratches on his face, which Keith himself claimed were from their house cat, not like something in the wild. And the reason why this is an example of like a glitch in the matrix is because I guess this was a really organic segue, is because this kind of addresses the idea that not necessarily that life is a simulation, but that there can be glitches in whatever this reality is, simulation or otherwise. There could be portals that kind of move things around. We talked about the Mandela effect, in which people kind of slip into very, very similar realities. Then again, there's also the idea of dimensions playing into this, and that is, per this theory, how people are disappearing so quickly without a trace.
That is, I mean, who's to say, right? Like, who's to say there like
Right.
the different glitches happening in different ways, and then it shifts like where one thing is located from another. I mean, we're getting like real into the weeds with this.
Oh,
one.
yeah,
Like,
for
that's
sure.
absolutely wild, but that could explain things moving from one place to another.
Exactly.
I mean, the skeptic in me is like, someone carried the baby 8 miles.
Right. And then I mean, I guess we don't have more details on that.
Yeah.
But like,
But I mean, like the shifting and the glitching of things, like very interesting.
it definitely attempts to answer it with yet another unknown, right? It attempts to address this mystery
to me,
by
it's
way
more
of
a scientific way to
Right.
kind of address it, right? You're thinking atoms aligning in a certain way, or etc.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right. It's basically saying we only know so much. And so maybe this is a theory that just has a blanket statement of whatever could be behind this. Maybe it's this,
Right.
that, or the other. It's beyond our natural understanding up until this point. And that's totally possible. I mean, like, even in the last 120 years, we only just started making cars and driving and then eventually going to space, 60 years ago?
Right.
50 years ago, really? Like, something like that.
I mean, speaking of Matrix, and I'll ask this out there to the task forces, if you knew that was like your reality, would you want to stay in it?
Oh, you're trying to Morpheus me right now?
Yeah.
Red pill, blue pill?
Yeah.
Jillian, what do you think? You staying in the Matrix?
Are you staying in the Matrix, or
Where do I go?
I mean, you just keep
You don't
living
know.
this life.
You live this life,
Keep
or you
living this
wake
life.
up in whatever reality
and
is.
fight the war against the machines.
Okay, we're going real Matrix then. We're going to Matrix.
Kind of interested to see what else there
Outside
is.
living is.
You don't
You're
think
living in
Cypher
the
had
true
something
reality.
going there?
You don't think
I
can?
can throw my ass
Can I get
back
back
into the
in?
system. No, you're not gonna have the all right. You're not gonna have the freedom to jump in and out like, oh man.
Oh, no, I miss
vacation
my
to
cat.
Like, yeah, exactly.
You're like, hold on, I'm gonna go visit my cat, and you get jacked in. You show your cat your new kung fu moves, and
you know what's crazy? Who's to say? Like, what if?
who's to say?
Right. Let's just go down this rabbit hole,
Please.
for a second.
Take me.
It's a Matrix situation going on.
Absolutely,
right now.
there is.
And we're in the Matrix, or just so that I say it that way, so that way people kind of understand.
I'm
But
hanging out.
the people that are running the Matrix isn't the machines. What if it's an advanced human race using the Matrix and humans to fuel their technology? Who's to say it has to be machines? What if we're
Yeah.
not doing this to ourselves?
Yeah, for sure. Why would it have to be energy though? You know?
That's true.
There's one theory that's like there's advanced life, and they're like doing simulations with us to see like, okay, where do things go wrong, and so that they can
Yeah.
use that information for their own.
I think that
Damn.
makes sense because that's what I was gonna say, Jill. Is
Right.
that yeah, no, that's totally fine. Like
To
'cause-
run simulations.
Exactly.
And
To
take
understand the
data
human
and-
condition. And that could also be what parallel universes are, where literally a processor is analyzing and simulating an infinite different array of like different iterations of this reality. And so when you slip side to side, it's just a coding glitch, right? And so that then
and
reveals the theory, right? Glitch in the matrix.
Exactly. I didn't even think of the fact that like right, we're all conditioned with like comic book stuff like that. Like multiple dimensions is like, you know, an alternate version of us. But what if it's just literally like the universe simulating another thing for data?
Right. It's interesting, man. I mean, it really,
crazy.
like, this is, okay, Task Force, this is why I wanted to break out the theories into a separate episode, just because
we're
we're
in it now.
We're in it. And this is just one of those, like, theory sections and episode topics that I know we could chew on for so long, because it's just, I mean, there's some cases that are straightforward. Here's what happened. Here are the theories. You know, bada boom. We don't know what in the end happened. But this is just one of those ones where it's like, it's just so topic centric that it's just like, it's mind boggling kind of thing. And so we want to, you know, talk about.
At that point, the task force becomes an interdimensional task force.
Oh my goodness, we are beyond this realm. We are between universes now.
I'll be honest, we do not have the funding for that.
Well, you don't need funding. Where we're going, we don't need money. We'll need, I don't know what you needed. We'll need spice to navigate the stars.
The spice.
We'll need a hyperdrive to get there fast. We're gonna need a flux capacitor to.
Just throw all
just
of it.
For I want to put that in my collection.
All of it. Throw a red pill and a blue pill in there as well.
Jillian, as you know, this is the Rooster Teeth's #1 movie podcast about mysteries.
Yes, it is.
You see why
number one movie podcast about mysteries. I love that.
Okay. Yeah, that's the glitch in the Matrix idea. I think it's deeply fascinating because it's again saying, well, here's what happened with this unknown case. It's the fact that we don't know. But yeah, like, but
I believe that more than cryptids.
Yeah, you know, for sure. Hey, everybody, it is Trevor. As always, I want to talk to you about our Mothman merch, the misunderstood hero. Christian, am I peeking? Good. Oh, damn. Well, yeah, no, that came out just last week, and I'm so excited about it. But I also want to take a moment to thank you all so much for showing up on Cyber Monday and selling out like half of our stuff. We put out a new pin. We put out a really awesome Task Force parka jacket that had its own pin and embroidery on it. It was really cool. It's one of my new favorite jackets, but you guys sold that out in hours. So thank you all so much for supporting the show, whether it be by way of the store at store.roosterteeth.com or just sharing the podcast with your friends or reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, whatever that form looks like. I just want to take this moment to be thankful and say thank you for being a member of the task force. With that said, I want to talk about some of the fantastic sponsors that also help make this show possible. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by HelloFresh. The most wonderful time of the year is also the busiest. You know how it is. But with all of that busyness, you can actually take grocery shopping off of your plate by putting some HelloFresh on your plate. HelloFresh sends you fresh, pre-measured ingredients with delicious recipes, and they come right to your door. HelloFresh makes holiday meals special without, you know, the high cost of dining out with your family and all the stress of going to the groceries and all of that sort of stuff. This season, you can choose from recipes like balsamic and fig beef tenderloin or pecan-crusted salmon, or go for a cozy comfort food choice like chicken sausage and sweet potato soup. I really enjoy all of the meals that I get from HelloFresh because it's very easy to make. It always tastes really, really good, even when I'm pushing my flavor boundaries, because sometimes I could be a bit of a picky eater. And the food is always tremendous. I always like to refer to the firecracker meatballs because I think those stand out to me. They make me feel like I'm a chef every time I'm cooking these meals, and they always make something healthy and right there ready for you. Task Force, you can go to HelloFresh.com/RedWeb14, that's the number 14, and use code RedWeb14 for up to 14 free meals. And you're going to get 3 special free gifts. That's up to 14 free meals and 3 free gifts at HelloFresh.com/RedWeb14. And again, use code RedWeb14. Get yourself some food, enjoy the holidays, and let them know we sent you. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? That's where therapy can really make a difference. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's not a crisis line or self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online. BetterHelp offers a broad range of expertise that might not be available locally for you, and their service is also available worldwide. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and live chat sessions with your therapist. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So why wait? Why invest in everything else going on in your life and not your mind? This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Task Force members, you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's BETTERHELP.com/redweb. And with that said, let's dive right back into the mystery. But we'll bring us back down to earth a little bit more with this next theory, and it centers on animals in the wilderness. But the missing 411 cases, may be a simple situation of an animal attack, or, various animal attacks, or people succumbing to harsh environments. Remember, some of these profile points center around large granite fields, boulder fields. Those usually have large cliff faces, a lot of nooks and crannies, perhaps small caverns that might not be explored yet or known about. But also another case point or a profile point is being near a source of water, which is a tremendous way to go missing, especially if there's underwater aqueducts. I mean, if you look at that, Jillian, do you remember what it's called? There's an island up in Canada, that treasure island with the money pit. Yeah, Oak Island, where basically there's this money pit or this treasure pit. They assume there's treasure down it, and everyone that goes down it ends up like dying or not being able to go down too far. And when they dump dye into there to figure out, okay, well, what's the underwater aqueduct situation of this natural island? And when they put the dye down in there, it came out various points around the island, basically saying that, there are so many different
like a whole tunnel system.
Oh,
down
yeah.
There. Yeah. I mean, the same thing with
that's just one island.
Well, same thing with the Amazon. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
You go down there and get lost.
Right.
They're still trying to path all that out. But not all of it is around water, though.
That's true. That's just one of the profile points. One of the kind of commonalities.
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally behind the fact that, if you fell into the river and then you got sent down a tunnel system underneath the river, etc. I totally I mean, that's a thing. The whole just I don't know, I don't know where I lie with the rest of it.
Yeah, but coming back to this particular theory, with animals, I'm just trying to think, of course, if there's an animal attack, it's usually predaceous, right? And so it's like a mountain lion.
They're not going to clean up after themselves.
They're probably not, but they're going to
hide the evidence.
I mean, a cougar would probably bite, take, and run, like a leopard would pull it up in a tree usually. But if it's like a predatory thing, then likely they're consuming. But then again, some of the bodies are found with no...
where's the blood? There's no scratches, right?
It's tough to say.
I just don't see this lining up.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
Where's the blood? Where are the scratches? Also, we know the location of this. We know the starting point of these missing cases, right? So, you'd see tracks. You'd see something
Unless the rain or inclement weather got in the way, you know what I mean? But I agree with you. I'm just saying. Rain wash it away.
Look, I get that it happens right away, but some of these cases, the boy next to the river, or the person that crested over the hill, they were right there.
Yeah, you would hear.
You would hear.
Feel like you'd hear.
And if anything, you would see some tracks or some markings, The cougar's not going to carry the person over their shoulder and then run away with them, right? They're going to drag them.
They're not going to stand upright like the other child saw. I mean,
they're going to drag them.
You're right.
So yeah, I just, it's so far unaligned with everything that we've talked about. It's a little baffling to me how it's even a theory.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point, dude.
Obviously, theories just kind of touch on everything.
Right.
But.
I mean, I can see how it could click in a few ways, but it's worth mentioning, and I appreciate you for mentioning that, because Paulides himself attempts to exclude all of the cases where animal interactivity, like an animal being a part of the story or the missing case or a missing person or whatever, he excludes those. But it's possible, it's still, that leaves room for doubt that, some of these cases could have animals interacting with the missing person just in ways that are more subtle or accidentally or somehow
tampering with the investigation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Type situation.
Yeah, especially when you consider these people being the ones that left groups. The lion goes for the gazelle that peels away from the group. Wolves do the same thing. It's very much a predator mentality to look for the individual that separates. And so seeing people that are one-offs or kind of by themselves, make themselves a target through that lens. But then also, you know, a lot of these bodies are found missing clothes. And so if there's a scuffle in some way, or they're, you know, instead of being bit and they bit the shirt instead, it's true. Like a lot of these bodies,
there would be evidence.
Yeah. It's tough to say because a lot of these bodies end up being like, how did they die?
Right,
and
exactly.
If they're being attacked, it's hard to envision how any person could die to an animal in a way that is not obvious, right? Whether they're bludgeoned or bit, unless it's like, I mean, or poison. It's hard to think of a way that they would die in a entirely mysterious circumstance. And beyond that, sure, have a couple like that are possible, but for all of these cases to be done in a similar way, I
just don't see it being
tough.
Animals.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like a mountain lion with a broom.
It could be, but this, as I kind of teased in part one, there are a couple other smaller stories that I wanted to talk about in these theories, and one of the smaller stories that does fit potentially with this theory is that of the case of 3-year-old Jared Atadero. He was believed to have been carried up the Rocky Mountains by a mountain lion, no broom, but a mountain lion, because his clothes and skull cap were found there. However, his father claims no mountain lion hairs were found on his clothes. There was no blood on his clothes, kind of like the same stuff that you were looking for.
Yeah.
And Jared's pants were found inside out, so an animal probably couldn't have done that. It seems like they would have been pulled off in a different way, like me getting home at the end of a long day of work.
Right.
Blah! Inside out, instantly. Pants off, Donald ducking around the house.
All right, well, that image is like burned to my brain right now. Let me just go ahead and try to erase that. It's been Donald ducking around the house.
Hey, I quote, that's Larry Matavina. He's one of our editors. That's his analogy.
Yeah, again, these are animals. These are, you know, they're not going to be tidy about it. That's just not in their nature.
Right. I'm with you. It's definitely worth considering, worth thinking about. But when you really look a little closer, I don't think it holds up to the scrutiny.
No, not at all.
Another theory kind of makes a whole lot of sense when you think about it. It's a pretty straightforward, and it's that there's some sort of foul play involved. Because in many of the instances of missing 411 cases, only one person was with or keeping an eye over the missing person, right? So again, whether they're in a group or whether they're being supervised, this happens when they either peel off and become a solo party or when they aren't being paid attention to, right? So it's possible that in these cases, some foul play goes down, whether it's another person comes through,
and I
a
guess
kidnapping
the
or something
weather
like that.
is just
and then the weather would just be
timing and just the perfect situation for the.
Well, unlike a mountain lion, you know, some sort of criminal could pull up an app and see what the weather's going to be like and try to look at the hourly forecast.
Completely true.
You know, dance between the clouds kind of thing.
Mountain lions would scratch that phone up.
But one last piece to the idea of foul play, but I also think that this also plays into the animal predator attack kind of angle, is that many of these missing 411 cases are children. But on top of that, we also outlined that some of them are elderly folk. And so, you know, this kind of plays into both of these theories. These are folks that might not be able to protect themselves as easily, except for the case of the hunter who had a gun, in which case I'm a little baffled, unless he was taken out by an actual grizzly, because that thing will take a couple shots before going down and just get pissed.
You see, other hunters went over there to check, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So, you see something. Grizzlies don't just move around.
Right.
Unseen, unnoticed, not leaving marks and stuff like that.
And supposedly they didn't hear any gunshots. You know, I don't know. That case is still strange. And what's even stranger on that one, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this in part one, but what's even stranger about that particular case is that only a few days later, and in a very, very close area, I think, Jillian, you were saying it was about a mile away?
It was within a mile.
Within a mile of that particular story, someone else, 10 days later, went missing under very similar circumstances. So we either got a very hungry bear on our hands that is super sleuthy, or one of these other theories is at play, right? But let's move on to the last theory, which I think is just as fascinating as all the other ones, but it kind of wraps them all together in a way, but it relates all the previous theories together, in that there is a belief that the missing 411 cases and their mysterious circumstances are all revolving around some sort of government cover-up. you touched on that a little bit earlier, but whether it's involving cryptids or something paranormal or even something realistic that is still sinister in nature, this theory purports that the government knows whatever that actual answer is,
right?
And they're the ones involved in covering this up. Yeah, because we know, and we talked about this in part 1, that there's no database that goes on that tracks all the missing persons in these national parks, which makes them easy to be forgotten.
That
right?
is true. I mean, I get that it costs money, but what if that was purposeful?
What doesn't, though? You know, like this. This seems like a valid thing to spend money on, because having this information on all these previous cases could help future cases, right? That's the whole point of an investigation. It's the whole point of keeping track of clues and all of these things. And also, even if someone is found having been deceased, at least there's that closure for the family, if you will. But
here's the thing.
Go for it.
If it's a funding situation, and I get that there's different jurisdictions, but why wouldn't the local authorities then still use it? Like, why wouldn't the National Park Ranger Department
just do it?
Just use like the local authorities database system or setup, right? Their infrastructure to just categorize and log.
It could be the cost of the software. It could be the people hours going into doing that. I don't know. It also could just be an excuse.
I mean, someone's like taking the time to do it, right?
Well,
I mean,
obviously,
the
information has to be out there.
They don't just go, "Oh, it's a missing person in the woods." It is what it is, right? Like
another day.
Yeah, I mean, someone's writing it down, noting, logging it somehow, some way. Like, why aren't we throwing that to the authorities?
Or maybe it is that way, and the only way Politis really has these information, these stories, is because of the families directly involved telling them. You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's so weird.
It relies on a lot of people in the know not spilling the beans,
right?
Which to me is a big flaw in the theory.
Huge, but I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where like this is a missing person's case, right? Yeah. Like that's a big thing. That's a big deal. People going missing, like that gets logged and tracked somehow, some way. So I don't know why they wouldn't communicate with. I mean,
yeah,
you know, authorities have issues communicating with each other as is, but like. If it was that kind of situation.
Let me posit to you this question, and it's going to feel a bit non sequitur, but bear with me.
Okay.
If aliens showed up on this planet, how dramatic of a change to day-to-day life do you think it would be?
If aliens showed up?
Yeah. If the government said straight up, that's an alien, boop, whoop, the camo undoes, there's ships in the air. Do you think that would rock the foundations of our society?
100%.
Right.
I mean, for me, I'd be like, okay, so like, are they here for good? Are they here for, you know, are they good? Are they evil? Like, what is the purpose? Oh, they've been here for hundreds of years and they're now just being revealed. Cool. You know what I mean? But I feel like the world would fall apart
you just say,
because
cool.
I mean, yeah, I fully believe that there are aliens out there, right? And if we're able to sit here and function,
why can't anything else?
Why can't, you know, we keep moving forward?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Majority of people aren't going to think that way. A lot of people are going to just start losing their minds because that's just how fragile our society is. And so there'd be a lot of distrust in the government.
Yep.
People would try and use the alien technology for nefarious reasons. I mean, people might try to make love to alien. Like, people are going to go wild in every direction, every which way. You know what I mean?
Aliens slanging it back and forth, this way, that. Just to put it in your words.
I mean, just... that's just what it is.
So here's what I did, Your Honor. I was leading the witness, and I admit it, because that's kind of what one TikToker is purporting is happening here with the government cover-up. And
the national park is a cover-up?
Yeah, and it's the only real reason why I could substantiate so many people knowing about something but not spilling the beans, because there's so much at risk. Again, assuming this theory is correct. So
this was the show American Horror Story had a season where it was American Horror Stories.
Oh, right, the more recent one, right?
Yeah, and this was just recent, and it came out months ago, and one of the episodes was, you know, there were feral people in the national parks, and the park rangers knew about it, the government knew about it, and it was like...
I'm tired of deer. I want human.
I mean, people would go missing and then be like, oh, they're falling out of, stepping out of line, etc. And it was very much like a, hey, like they do their thing.
So the government's going, tut, tut, tut. I'm sorry, little Dennis went disappearing. Okay, but listen, this is the violence we need to settle for to maintain the truce.
Yeah, pretty much. Like there's a truce going on, and yeah.
Oh my God, can you imagine how frightening that would be if there were a bunch of like feral humans and little civilizations out there in all the national parks that then turned and said, it's Civil War time, and like suddenly just people came out of the woods like the children of the forest of Game of Thrones. You're just like, oh my God!
I mean, you have a Namor situation. It comes out of the water, comes out of Atlantis, and upset, mad at the Here's my whole thing with that though is just like, how do you have like a couple park ranger stations here and there controlling a whole
right?
Like,
well, maybe that's just what we see.
Yeah, you could completely say that as well. Like, there's little bases and camps set up that we just, I mean, but it kind of feels like in the whole park, like, you could just freely go places. Doesn't really. If that situation was happening, it seems like reckless of the government to just give people so much freedom to freely traverse the parks like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
How?
Well, don't be like, hey, here's a nice park. Isn't that great? We're keeping nature good. You can visit it whenever you want. I'm gonna go in. Sure, go on in. Just go on in. Yeah, everything's fine.
Go on in. What and then what? The government just go, please don't walk left. Please don't walk left.
They walk left. I guess you know what? That's the price we pay.
Right? Like, how does that even?
I don't know, man. The government's done a lot worse.
Loose and
you know what I mean?
Wild. But then
it's tough.
I feel like we'd have so many people like, I don't know, talk about it, pictures or whatnot, and like.
Well, I was just referencing this.
And again, you can say the government's silencing people, but like,
yeah, here's my brain doing the red web thing, connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. But like before we started this episode, I was talking in this room to Jillian and Fredo about a TikTok I saw the other day that was somebody filming a tree line in Gettysburg and how you see figures moving around, and everyone that lives near Gettysburg is like, regardless of their religious standpoint, is like, nah, it's haunted. Like there are specters out there. What if they're just witnessing? I don't know, feral people.
I mean, all the missing persons, like the 411 cases, it's just feral people.
Maybe. Well, let me give a shout out too, because there is a TikToker, just while we're on that subject, the Aiden Mattis on TikTok. So he's claiming that the government is aware of not only like feral people is one thing, but he has spoken to that in a recent TikTok, but his baseline theory is that the government knows about Wendigo, and that the Wendigo actually inhabit the very intricate cave systems that are running underneath North America, and that Teddy Roosevelt began the National Park Service with the intent of containing the Wendigo and keeping an eye on it. Of course, it is other things like to maintain nature and give the beauty of nature, like you can go to the parks and visit or whatever. Maybe that's the cover-up. And so, yes, per this TikToker, it is a known entity. It is a known matter, in that it does as negative as dark as it is. It's easier to let people go missing periodically and try to just sweep that under the rug than it is to expose the idea that there are either A, feral people, or B, Wendigo, or C, anything, much like aliens just being on Earth already. It's so, because it would just rock the foundations of our understanding.
I don't think that theory is too crazy. The only thing that pulls that theory apart for me is the fact that of how do you contain it, right?
Right.
There's not a bunch of fences in the national park or anything like that. Like,
my guess would be like these are like, when you look at the tunnels, maybe that's where the tunnels are most populated. Right. Like if you looked at a map, this is where the tunnels surface a lot. So just carve that out and make it a park.
I mean, like, it just has all these times and days and minutes that have passed. It just hasn't wandered into civilization. That's a big thing for me, right?
I mean, like, here's the thing too, though. Like, you don't see wolves walking down the street. I mean, someone's gonna Google up an image and it's gonna happen. I saw a coyote outside the office the other day and it was freaking me out. But
right, I mean,
cute until it bites. But
yeah, things tend to stay in their habitat.
They tend to stay in their habitat. So maybe it's a skittish thing. I don't know.
True,
or maybe if you give it enough room to run and
Right.
frolic and do its thing, then it won't
There's no
need to.
reason to go somewhere else.
Maybe they're not nomadic. Maybe they don't sprawl out. And so if you identify early enough, or at some point, maybe Teddy Roosevelt, per this theory, like said, okay, these are the hot spots, so that must be their natural habitats. Border them up, like cordon them off, and call that a national park. And whatever nature's there, yeah, that's part of the park.
It's just so wild.
It is wild.
That they're just like, all right, and people can just walk all over this national park. Just cross my fingers, they don't get snatched up.
Yeah.
Part of the theory is like, well, if they sectioned off this much land, people would be like, what are you hiding? Like Area 51, right? Like everyone's like, what's in there? Because they can't, you're not allowed in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can't have it sectioned off. It's just...
So they gave it a label, something
Right?
something nice, something fluffy, something like national park.
Interesting middle ground that's just, it feels so fragile.
And they have like design trails. You stay in this area.
These are safe. This is the safe spot. And then every night someone comes through and they burn sage along the path. And, they sprinkle holy water on the path. It's interesting, man. I love these theories because, again, it just really stretches the known. It's pulls your mind into places that you normally don't think. And that's what really gets my interest piqued about this kind of topic, unknown mysteries, unsolved mysteries, and things like that. So shout out to the Aiden Mattis. If you want to check them out on TikTok and some of their theories, I encourage you to do so. But that kind of resolves, I guess, more or less the theories that we had to discuss. Do you have any other thoughts on the matter? Anything that you might think could answer some of these disappearances?
I mean, honestly,
outside of alien abductions.
At some point, we should look at more alien stuff.
Jillian says yes.
I mean, I'm just kind of honestly blank-minded on this one, right? Like these are disappearances. These people went missing in the woods, and there hasn't been anything that's really lined up for me. But
yeah.
I mean, it is the thing that is 100% fact is that these people went missing.
Right. And it kind of just brings me back to it. Like, yes, it's morbidly interesting in it's human nature, especially for the loved ones close to these individuals, to seek closure and to seek answers. But, and I hate to go too hard on this author here, but it almost begs the question of like, is it preying on the unfortunate? Is it preying on the unknown to kind of like capitalize on being like, well, these are the most mysterious of circumstances, so let's like make a book out of it? Or do you want to take it from the perspective of like, Politis trying his best to actually collate all of this information because he's reached out to these parks to say, hey, can we get this list going? I think this would help prevent future cases. Yeah. And they were like, no, it's going to cost $1.4 million across all 383 parks that he talked to.
God, I would just love to see like a billionaire come through and just go,
just sniff at
1.4 million each park?
Total. So like, yeah.
Oh.
So like one park was like 34,000. So like, Mark Cuban, where are you at? I've got a pitch for Shark Tank.
God, I mean, like, right? No one's just a billionaire or whatever, but like, I mean, I would love to see someone just go, okay, here's the funding, and then see what the reaction is.
That's like having $1 million
they're just
and
like,
saying, here's $1,000.
I don't know. And just like, oh, why? Why are you hesitating on that? Like, this person is donating the money for the infrastructure.
Maybe it's Mark Cuban's out there chomping up little peoples. He's like, I'm not funding this. Why? Why won't you fund? I'm basically just saying, what's the ulterior motive of not funding this if you had the means? Because like it seems, is it the hunting ground for the rich? Is this the Purge? Oh my God! Oh, is it the Purge?
I mean, there's
Julian's eyes are wide open. Like, oh my God!
There's got to be conspiracies about like. The rich having some type of...
Oh, my God.
There are.
Oh, yes, there are.
I'm sure there's a bunch, like the rich just doing things that are just wild and crazy.
Yeah, you think they get away with small fines and low jail time. I mean,
yeah,
that's just the tip of that iceberg. But anyway, this has been the Missing 411 case. Deeply fascinating. Again, if you want another fascinating case that's up this alley, we just did one the other week, the Yuba County 5. I can't recommend it enough. Very intriguing. I'm really happy that I talk about this all the time, how we continue to expand the horizons of what we talk about. But I just love that we're now pushing into these territories that are even less concrete and more subject matter, more conversational.
But
the answers,
none of these theories, like, I would put any amount of money into.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's not to say that they're bad theories. It's just like, this is one of those cases where it had a little bit of this and a little bit of that in terms of like the actual situation that happened and how the disappearance played out. So it doesn't slot into anything, even just a little bit.
Right.
Like, it's not animals, like the dimensional stuff, like that's wild and crazy. So honestly, it's like, I'm not going to be a betting man on that.
Right.
It's just, I'm hollow-minded on this one because I don't know. I just know the people went missing. There's no tracks. There's weird weather. People have gone. It's not like the hunter was miles away, but the child and the person that was like with their friends that crested over the hill, like, how do you explain that? Like,
it's tough.
There's
man.
nothing there.
It's almost like just in closing, and this might be even one of the critiques, is like maybe looking through the lens of Occam's razor, maybe the most likely theory to answer this is that we just don't know enough about each story, and that it's recusing enough of the facts that perhaps, whether ignorantly or whether intentionally, facts of the case that would help give a little bit more understanding. Or there's just the idea that like sometimes things happen and we just don't know. We don't know why or where or when or whatever, and it sucks, and frustrating. But like,
yeah, I don't. I'm sitting here and I'm still thinking, like, is it right, the underground like caves, but then again, it doesn't fit into anything very nicely. Like that fits into maybe the person that crested over the hill, but like, what about the boy?
Right.
Yeah, and then even then, it's like people are going and searching for these places. If it was people falling into cave systems, like, they're gonna start at the location that they went missing. A hole's not just gonna cover itself up, right? None of it works. None of it works.
This just makes me want to take a bunch of little cameras and stick them all over all these parks and live stream it constantly, and just see what happens. Yeah, I'll be the man behind the chair. You go get those cameras out there. Yeah,
like Lucius Fox in The Dark Knight. He had all those monitors.
Yeah, cell phones. Anyway, this has been Red Web. Thank you all for listening. If you want to support the podcast, there's a lot of ways to do that. I talked about the merch at the very top of the episode. Again, that's store.roosterteeth.com. Another fantastic way to support the show is sharing us with a friend of yours, someone who likes mysteries like you do. Just bringing somebody else into the task force also gives you someone else to talk to about these mysteries, to noodle on, to these frustrating non-theory theories.
Take your favorite episode, throw the theory at them right there.
Boom.
Throw that hook.
Yeah, get them with the hook. Line, sinker.
Get them thinking.
But anyway, thank you all for listening. Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for another mystery.
Bye-bye.